I'm going to be talking to Sam Abuelsamid, an automotive engineer and EV analyst for Guidehouse Insights, who joins us regularly to update us on where the electric vehicle industry is. And we're going to be talking about the impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act that President Biden signed last week, I guess it was, and the California internal combustion engine ban that will take place in 2035. So welcome to the interview, Sam.
It's good to be back with you again, Markham.
Likewise. Now, this is, these two announcements are big. They're really big. The IRA has all sorts of tax credits and incentives to stimulate EV adoption, and the North American EV industry, and the California ban just supercharges that, I guess, from where I'm sitting. Would you agree?
It it certainly changes things around a lot, and it's added a lot of complexity. Since the announcement of the IRA, a lot of people are scrambling, trying to figure out what it all means.
Well, let's talk about that, because you are in communication all the time. You're interviewing and the automakers about their EVs and test driving them and so on. So you get to talk to these executives and lots of folks in the supply chain as well. So what is the industry saying?
So it appears right now that the IRA is not really going to have much direct impact on manufacturers' product plans, because most OEMs were moving pretty aggressively towards building a lot more EVs over the next decade, and many of them have been publicly targeting getting to 50% EV penetration by 2030, and in some cases 100% by 2035, like General Motors. At least that's their publicly stated target. But what we are seeing now, because of the way the rules have been written in the IRA, this replaces the previous $7,500 federal tax credit that came in the 2007 energy bill. This supersedes that, and now what we have, that $7,500 has been split into two parts, $3,750 each. That is the requirements. There are a lot more requirements for that. It's not just a matter of building an EV and having to be one of the first 200,000 the manufacturer sells. The sales caps are gone, but now they've put in place they've put in rules that incentivize manufacturers to localize battery production and battery material production in North America, and so there's no longer a sales cap. The program runs through 2032. As many EVs as the manufacturers can sell, but the vehicles have to be assembled in North America, either US, Canada, or Mexico. And the batteries, for battery components, which include cells, modules, and active cathode materials or active electrode materials, those also have to be produced in North America in order to qualify. And then for the critical minerals, things like lithium, cobalt, manganese, aluminum, nickel, there's a list of about more than 24 minerals. Those have to be sourced, extracted, and or processed either in North America or a country that the U.S. has a free trade agreement with. So countries like Australia, South Korea, Chile, Peru, and a couple of dozen others. So what that means is that right now, from the time the bill was signed about a week ago through the end of the year, the current system is still in place with the 7,500, but it only applies to vehicles built in North America. So vehicles like the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the Ford F-150 Lightning, now the new 2023 VW ID4, which is now built in Tennessee, those all qualify for $7,500. Starting January 1st, we start to get the phase in of the content requirements for the batteries. So everything still has to be built here, but battery materials have to be sourced. Critical minerals have to be sourced from those countries, as well as the components.
Well, that sounds like there's going to be a big scramble to get battery plants up and running. A, source the minerals. B, source the refining and processing of those minerals into metals, and then C, the cell components and so on, and then the battery assembly. I mean, that's a fairly significant supply chain that mostly is in China at this point.
Right. So the part of it for battery components, we're actually in pretty good shape on that one, because over the last 2 years, manufacturers have announced a lot of new battery plants that are either already underway or will be fairly soon in terms of construction. And our list of the announced battery cell production facilities in North America currently, for the ones where they've announced capacity, we're already at nearly 500 gigawatt hours, which would be enough for about half of typical North American production of about 11 million vehicles. So the battery plants are well underway. By 2025, we'll have about 500 gigawatt hours, probably more than that, with some of the stuff where they've said we're building a plant, but they haven't said exactly how big it's going to be. I'm guessing probably somewhere over 600 gigawatt hours by 2026. So that part we're in good shape. It's the battery materials that are the big question. And again, I think as you mentioned, a lot of it is processed in China. Materials, things like lithium, are not mined in China. They're mostly mined in South America and Australia, but about 90% of the lithium for batteries is processed in China. That stuff, anything processed in China does not qualify for any of these incentives. So they are scrambling to relocate or to establish new processing facilities and new mining in North America and other locations.
Okay, that we've done some other interviews, so we won't get into a lot of detail on that. Because I've talked to some other experts about that issue and Canada's role in it. But I do want to talk about the credit up to 40,000 for heavy duty EVs. For work and business EVs up to $40,000, and there's been a lot of the start of efforts by California and some other states to subsidize medium duty, so have delivery vans, heavy duty, Class 8 semis, that sort of thing. Does this then really accelerate things like the Tesla semi truck and others that are working in that space?
It'll accelerate some of it, particularly the smaller vehicles in those segments, things like delivery vans. So within the commercial truck segment, and from the perspective of the IRA, they're counting anything over 14,000 pounds. So class 3 and above is what's counted there. And so 14,000 pound vehicles, this is the large delivery vans, medium duty box trucks, that are delivering between distribution centers and stores, retail stores, things like that, refuse trucks. Not all of those vehicles, there's a pretty wide variety of vehicle types and use cases. Not all of them are very well suited to battery electric right now. It's more the smaller, the local delivery vans, that sort of thing. And school buses, electric school buses are a big one. Those are all really well suited because the range requirements tend to be smaller. It tends to be lower speeds in mostly urban and suburban areas where they're operating. So you can get by with a smaller battery pack on those. And those we do expect to see a significant acceleration from this 40 up to $40,000 tax credits, 40,000 or 30% of the incremental cost over an internal combustion equivalent, whichever is less. So that area we do expect to see a lot of growth. Most out of all the commercial vehicles, though, we did a study earlier this year, about 40% of all the greenhouse gas emissions, actually 45% of all the greenhouse gas emissions from commercial vehicles comes from about 20% of the vehicles, which is long haul trucks. Those are not really well suited to electrification because of the distances they have to travel and the amount of battery they would have to carry that eats into the payload, which is where they get their revenue from. We expect most of those vehicles to not necessarily go battery electric, but at least for some applications, start to go towards hydrogen fuel cells. Those do count towards the credit. They're eligible for credits. So we'll see a mix of different types of vehicles depending on the use case.
Just one final question, Sam. You very deftly tiptoed around my question about what are the automakers saying, and I gather that so there's not going to, the IRA is not going to change their plans. They're already set on on this path. But what are they telling you about the IRA, the problems, maybe difficulties implementing? Are they things a little panicked in Detroit?
I wouldn't say panicked. I would say that they are moving aggressively. They're scrambling, especially on the materials. They're lobbying hard to get some relief, both from California and the federal government, to speed up the permitting process for developing mineral production in North America, because that's something that generally takes a long time. So that Ford just came out yesterday that they're pushing for some expedited permitting there. And then the other thing that's happening, not so much from companies based here in North America, but rather from some of the overseas companies, is accelerating the shift of production of some of their EVs to North America. Hyundai in particular last week indicated that the plant that they had previously announced for Georgia for production in 2025 to build EVs and batteries, they're pulling ahead the start of construction of that plant with a goal of getting that one up and running and producing vehicles and batteries by the second half of 2024. So I think you're going to see some acceleration of shifting of where things are built, as opposed to shifting what gets built.
Do we have any idea about how much capital is going to be invested in all of these, the plant manufacturing and setting up of operations? And I mean, this sounds like a capex of tens of billions, if not more, rather than a few billion.
Yeah, battery plants, you're typically looking somewhere between $2.5 and $3 billion each, and we're looking at about of what's been announced so far. I think it's almost 20 battery plants in North America by 2026. So right there, you're looking at somewhere around 60 or 70 billion dollars just for battery plants. And then in addition, there's the retooling of assembly plants, retooling of engine plants to produce electric motors and electric gearboxes for electric motors instead of traditional transmissions and engines. So yeah, it's going to be when you add it all up, it's going to be in the hundreds of billions.
Sam, always appreciate your insights. Thank you very much for this.
My pleasure, Markham. Have a great day.